Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to do a little bit of a different video today. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, but didn't actually have the ability to. I've been using the Helix Floor as audio interface for my studio. I've been working on my whole new project using nothing but the Helix Floor. But recently I ordered and received a brand new interface that was released at NAMM this year from Focusrite, the Focusrite Clarett 2 Pre-USB. Now, the Clarett 2 Pre is not a new interface when running off Thunderbolt. I've never had a computer with the ability to run off Thunderbolt. So this one was kind of interesting to me to get one that was going to run off of USB and USB-C in particular. So it was rated with very good latency specs, which is something I look for. And the other thing that was interesting about it is it's bus powered. If you have the right USB-C, I think it's Gen 2 3.1. I'm not an expert on the whole USB thing, but I believe that's what it is. And with the right version of Windows. I use Windows computers, so I can't speak for Mac stuff, but you can bus power this. So I thought this is really interesting because I thought, how nice would that be to be able to take my USB-C equipped laptop with me? This unit, which, is sitting right here in front of me, it's off camera, but it's very tiny. It's like, a little longer than my hand and, this big and this wide, right? Which could fit into, a laptop bag, bus power it, and maybe run Helix Native with it. Now, that brought up an interesting thought to me because I've seen a lot of people talking online about if there's a sound difference between Helix Native and, let's say, Helix Floor or Helix LT. Now, under the hood, as far as processing, from what I understand, they're the identical sound engines, if that's the proper term for it, right? We're getting all the same modeling, all the same effects. Obviously, it's going to be run natively off of our computer's CPU rather than using whatever CPU power is in the Helix Floor, the Helix LT, and so on and so forth. But that is not what the problem is. The problem is how we get the sound into the computer, right? So interfaces like the Focusrite I've been talking about have DIs built into them. Now, are all DIs equal? Well, no, they aren't. So depending on what interface you have, you may have noticed, if you're a native user who also has used Floor, that when you plug into native, maybe it sounds different than when you play the same patch plugged in directly into Helix Floor. And it got me thinking, I wanted to test this out, and I thought I would shoot a video for it. Now, this isn't me saying one way or the other. I just wanted to come down to a final conclusion here as to how close I can have native sound to Floor or LT when I'm using the exact same patch. So here's what my methodology was. And it's impossible to do this purely scientifically. And here's the big reason why. I've got to play whatever I'm playing to demonstrate as far as guitar parts 2 times, right? And those 2 performances can never be perfectly identical. It's not like playing one DI performance and then reamping it through native and reamping it through Floor. That would defeat the purpose because then we're only using one DI. I didn't have any ability to do a split where I had one signal and split it out to both. So what I did is I just thought, okay, I've got to just do this where I took a song, a section of a song with the drums, bass, and rhythm guitar from my new project. And I got rid of the rhythm guitars. And I simply said, okay, I'm going to play through the rhythm guitar parts, one time through native, plugging into my Focusrite interface as the DI, and one time I'll record them again with the exact same identical patch on Helix Floor, plugging into the Floor as the DI. Now, like I said, the performances are going to be slightly different. I just played it as if I was, recording it. And I feel like I got a pretty consistent performance between the two. But again, I understand it's not identical, right? I'll talk about the levels and whatnot, which kind of show that I did perform it pretty equally, I believe. Anyways, so that's what I did. So what I want to do is I want to play back the various tracks now. What I want to do is I want to play you a full mix using, basically it's going to have drums and bass, and it's going to have 2 rhythm guitar tracks, one hard panned left and one hard panned right. And one of them is going to be from the Helix Floor, recorded with my guitar directly into the Helix Floor and the patch being processed in the Helix Floor. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I went into my Focusrite interface and recorded those same 2 rhythm guitar tracks, different performance, like I've already mentioned. And I did the same thing, 2 rhythm guitar tracks, hard panned left and right. Now, here's the important point. In all of the sound files you're about to hear, I took Cubase inside my DAW, and I used the LUFS, loudness unit full scale meters, and I used the integrated meters to listen to the whole track, every one of these tracks, and I marked down what the LUFS readings were for them. Okay, so this is interesting. The performance I did on the Helix Floor, both rhythm guitar parts, okay, came out at an LUFS of minus 19.2. When I went back and reperformed them on native and measured those, they had an LUFS of minus 19.0. So they were within 0.2 LUFS of each other, meaning that the perceived loudness is almost identical. Probably something that we're not even going to be able to pick out with our ear, okay? Now, in the mixes, I balanced for that, and I brought down the native volume of the native tracks by 0.2, okay? Just to kind of get them closer. Even though I don't think you would have noticed the difference anyways, but I just wanted to get rid of those variables so that we were hearing things that were going to be as close as possible. Now, the interesting thing about it, having the fact that those are 2 different performances shows that I did, I guess, perform them fairly close, and I was hitting the strings at a fairly consistent in a consistent manner. So what you're going to hear is I'm going to play you back the mix. I also videotaped myself while I was recording it, just so you don't have to look at a black screen. Maybe that's better than looking at me. It's quite possible. But I'm going to play you back the full mix with native, or actually the full mix with floor first, probably. The full mix with native, the native tracks. Then I'm going to play you back the soloed rhythm guitars from floor and the solo rhythm guitars from native. And then I did something else that was kind of interesting. I actually, within my DAW, took the rhythm guitar tracks and edited them in various spots throughout and edited them together so that there was these seamless switching between the floor processed tones and the native processed tones. And you won't know when you're listening to it where those splice points or edit points are. I just did it at various points throughout. So I want to play that back for you. And then after we listen to it, I'll come back and I'll explain exactly where they were switching so that you can kind of go back and listen for yourself and see if you notice a difference. I was pretty surprised how little difference there actually was, and was surprised that we could pretty much, in my opinion, get, at least on this tone, get extremely close to the exact same sound as floor going into an interface such as the Focusrite Clarett that I'm using here. Now, having said that, this is just one interface. Are there going to be other interfaces that are maybe inferior to this one that won't work as well? Absolutely. And I mean, that's going to be different for every interface. The Focusrite Clarett is not what I would consider a low budget interface, but it's also an extraordinarily expensive interface. The 2x USB street price in the US, I believe, is around $399. So it's not a ridiculously priced unit if somebody is looking for a decent interface. And it's a very, very nice interface to use. Sounds great all around. Okay, so what you're going to hear first, I'm going to play for you right now, is the full mix, and these are the guitar tracks recorded from Helix Floor. Okay, be right back. All right, now let's dive right into doing the same mix with the volumes matched of the tracks that were processed through Helix Native or played through Helix Native. All right, now let's listen to just the soloed rhythm guitar tracks that were processed through Helix Floor. All right, so now let's take a listen to the solo rhythm guitar tracks that were processed through Helix Native. All right, so I don't know what you thought of that, or if you could hear a big difference or not. Let's do that last test I was talking about, where now I've spliced together various points throughout, where I've mixed the Helix Native process tracks and the Helix Floor process tracks, and they're just going to seamlessly switch between one another, and see if you can find where the edit points are. I'm not even going to tell you how many there are or where they are, but we'll discuss that when I come back. Okay, take a listen and let me know what you think. All right, so what'd you think of that? That was kind of interesting, kind of surprising, actually. For anybody who wants to go back and listen again, what I actually did is, starting with Helix Floor, that was the first sound you heard, every 4 beats, every bar, I switched between them back and forth. So that I thought that might be a good way to do it, just so anybody can go and count, 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, it's going to switch to Helix Native. 2, 3, 4, it's going to switch back to Floor, all the way through to the end. So I don't know how many bars, I didn't count how many bars I did there, but anyways, I don't know if that was of interest to anybody, but I thought it might be kind of an interesting thing. I've seen a few people talk about it and say, oh, it sounds so much better when I play through my Helix Floor than when I play with Native. And that may very well be the case for some folks, depending on what DI they're using to get their sound into Native, right? With this case here, and if anybody is looking to purchase a separate interface to take, this is what I love about this, is I can just take this on the road now, I can be in a hotel room, I can be anywhere with a laptop, my small interface, without having to take Floor or LT with me, Helix Native on my laptop, and I can work on productions and have essentially the same sound, or, close enough to the same sound that I don't think it's going to be really perceptible. So anyways, so if anybody's looking for an interface that isn't, the Helix or the Helix LT, I can highly recommend the Focusrite Clarett. I've also used the Scarlett in the past, although I owned that far before the time that Native was out. So I never got to use it with that, but I did use it with different amp sims, and it was an awesome interface as well. May very well have the same DI, so it would likely work very well with Native too, and that's even less money. I believe that street's in around $250 or something in the States. So excellent interfaces that Focusrite's putting out if you're looking for something small like that, for traveling purposes or whatever else you might need it with. So anyways, I hope somebody enjoyed that. I thought it was kind of interesting. Not that it's really coming to any definitive scientific conclusions, but who cares? It was fun, and it was more for my own curiosity to see if I could get away with using Native with this interface without really noticing too much of a difference in the sound, and I feel like I can. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please hit the subscribe button, like the video, share it if you don't mind, and I appreciate all the support, and we'll see you guys again very soon. Take care. Ciao.